Good morning. Good morning.
Morning.
We're live, and we're all here. And my name is DeCarlo. I've been a member of Unity for well over 20 years here in Unity of Springfield since 2015, when we moved from Florida to back to Springfield. This is where I grew up, and I was a state representative here over 40 years ago. Long time. And but I want to start today as a continuation of last week when we were talking about what it means for us to take the Bodhistavva Vow. Bodhistavva Vow does not mean to subscribe to Buddhism. You can as the next step, but it's really understanding your place in the world, basically, to become who it is you're here to become. Part of the way I like to look at this is that we're all part of a lineage. What does that mean? A lineage is not what we typically think of your parents and grandparents and genealogy. A lineage is who you are from the very beginning, from centuries past. A long time ago. And understanding that we are here as a part of that lineage and that we are to pick up with our memories where we left off. To have a true appreciation of what Buddhism means, and particularly taking the Bodhistavva Vow, you have to come at it with the idea that we just didn't start right now. We didn't just begin, we were born, and when we die, we're over. We can't have an eternal cosmic spirit if we think that we just appeared all of a sudden we were born and we didn't have a place in the universe before that time. So to really come to the Bodhistavva Vow and have a true appreciation of what that means, we have to come to a better understanding of who we are. So, I want to begin this morning with what we might call an opening centering. So we're all basically connected to what we're going on to speak about today. Not necessarily what I have to say, but how that impacts you when you leave here. Because that's what the vow is all about. When we think of meditation, meditation isn't just something you sit for 15 or 20 minutes and you're done. When we're truly living the present, meditation is how you go about your day. Every activity you do, every person you meet, and everything you want to do is a part of the continuum. That spirit that you are here to materialize in our material world. So when we think about centering, I want to think first about coming into stillness. What does that mean? You know, when we think about the meaning of stillness and how it attributes who we are in the process of becoming, we first by thinking of taking a breath. Why is the breath so important? For thousands of years, the Chinese called it qi. When you think of the movements, Tai Chi. Tai Chi is the movements combined to your breath. And the breath you use while you're doing Tai Chi is a continuation of taking you there. Where is there? It doesn't matter. You're on the way to getting that. So when we take a breath, we let it settle into who we are and have an understanding of that's why we're here. Last Sunday, we explored the truth that spirit continues, that nothing essential is ever lost. Think about that for a moment. Nothing essential, and is ever lost. Sometimes somebody you see, sometimes it'll be a movie, that one line. Or there's a song that you heard 40 years ago. There's a line in that song that you connect with. It wasn't necessarily the song, but it's a word that impacted your memories of the past. We think of the past when we hear a song back in the 60s or 70s, or this Motown or the Beatles or someone else. We think of our memories. Oh, what were we doing then? No. What were we doing hundreds of years ago? What were we doing thousands of years ago? What is the lineage we are a part of? So we explored last Sunday the idea that truth, that spirit continues. That nothing essential is ever lost. That the thread of who we are does not end when our body falls away. We felt it in the presence of those who walk with us still every day. We feel the presence of those around us, and they impact us as we impact them. We felt the continuity of life, the continuity of purpose, the continuity of love. Why do we speak so much of love? Why do we listen to music so much, always talking about what love means to us? In the East, it has an entirely different meaning than what we think of in the West. You start with thousands of years ago thinking that we are a part of 10,000 things. We are not separate from nature. We are a part of nature. So for thousands of years, people come to that conclusion going in that we are a part of nature, and but one of 10,000 things are respect, and responsibility changes. It moves beyond us to what we think we need, through our ego or whatever we think we need to be doing, to how do I adjust myself that I can best reflect my environment? Or what do I need to be doing? What do I need to be doing? That, in essence, is the Bodhistavva Vow. So today, we take the next step. If spirit continues, then so does our responsibility. So does our calling. So does our part in the great unfolding. So let's rest in that for a moment. What does that mean? What does that mean to live in the moment? Anyone have any ideas? Go ahead.
Well, I suppose you could define it by what
We have an online.
I see.
Go ahead.
I suppose one way to approach defining that is by its opposites. You're not living in the past or the future. Not all there is, but your focus is on what is now.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I would.
That's very good.
Especially when we run. I feel present.
What?
When I run.
What? Go ahead.
Drumming helps me to feel like I'm present.
Drumming does that very much because you have to focus. You have to be one with what you are. As a quick follow-up to what he was talking about, the opposite, in the I Ching, the key to thousands of years of history and how it all began with I Ching was the whole focus is complementary opposites. We don't think of it that way. When we think about how we do things, we think of opposites, the opposite from what we should be thinking. Complement. How do we complement the opposites in such a way that there's a middle that is found that is good for everyone and nature as well? Did you have a comment? Okay, that's all right.
You just have the
Go ahead.
mic. Yeah, I think.
Peter,
Peter?
take the mic.
Okay, it's not dragging the past with us, you know, our accomplishments, our frustrations, embarrassments, and not being distracted by the future, you know, like whatever maybe our hopes, dreams, and anxieties are, and just being able to focus and
Very good.
not stress about things and just focus on what's going on right now, what's important.
Thank you, Peter. I think a large part of that is ego. Being able to let go of ego in such a way that it doesn't benefit us. It doesn't meet the standard of who we want to become. We need enough ego to have a sense of purpose. But does that ego only apply to us? Does that ego apply to the world we live in? Okay? So I want to continue by saying something where we left off last week. And we talked about the idea of stone markers. What does that mean? I mean, we go through life with events occurring that shape who we are. Whether it's a lost job, whether a dear member of our family who has died, that changes our universe of who we think that is. Or maybe the job we had, we learned that, as Ram Dass taught us, you know, who I am from 9 to 5 is not who I am from 5 to 9. Your job is what you do, but it doesn't necessarily define who you are. And I think that's a very important part of this whole process. So one of the things about the stone markers many times in China is they stood for centuries, pointing the way forward. Many times we identify that with people who live over time. One of the most famous and commonly referred to was Confucius. If we don't know anything about China, when we're growing up and hear about it, it's always Confucius says, just a part of popular culture. Whether he ever said that or not, we refer to because he's a marker of virtue. That's the key. Virtue and what they call piety toward your family. And what Confucius taught was it wasn't just fealty to your immediate family, it was also to your community and to the world. So it was a continuum. We are a continuum of that process. So, and what those markers did was they taught us that their presence was enough. And it pointed us in the direction that we needed to take in a long run. They said, you are not alone. You are part of something that continues. Think about that. What does that mean? You know, often we feel like we're alone, or we feel like, you know, we don't have that many people around us, or we, you know, whatever it is, we feel like we're alone with our thoughts. But we're never alone. When we open ourselves to the cosmos and the universe and that sense of memories, then they're always present. always a part of who you're going to become. And you need that. And that's really important. When we talked about the I Ching, not as fortune telling, but as the oldest map of continuity, a reminder that heaven and earth move in patterns, and we move with them. When you go further into what is Taoism, well, if you talk about religious Taoism instead of just the other side, there's a very strong belief that there are three heavens. There are the one we live. This is heaven. This is upper heaven. The one below us is lower heaven. But we're always there. We're always present. We're always in the process of growing into that sense of identity over time. And that's the strength of what Buddhism teaches, that sense of spirit, and why this vow becomes so important as we move with them. We talked about the ones we love who have stepped beyond the veil, which means who have died, who have gone beyond us, and how the veil is thinner than we think. And we ended with the simple truth: if spirit continues, then so do we. It can't work any other way. Our spirit is continuous, as it should be. What do we do with that truth? How do we live from it? The Bodhistavva as the human form is about continuance. The Bodhistavva is not a supernatural being, not a saint on a pedestal, not a figure carved in stone. A Bodhisattva is simply a human being who has awakened to the truth of oneness and then makes a choice. I will stay. I will help. And I will continue the work for all beings. That is the essence. In unity language, this is the Christ nature, the awakened heart, the soul remembering why it came. The Bodhisattva is the one who sees suffering and does not turn away. The one who sees confusion and brings clarity. The one who sees fear and brings presence. What is the presence we bring when we step into a room with others? I think that's important to think about our own identity and what we are here to try to achieve. This is why Confucius was so valuable and had such a great impact 2,500 years ago. Because he taught people to see virtue as the key. The amazing thing about Confucius is that when he lived, nobody really paid any attention to it. And it wasn't until his grandson got together with one of his followers over 100 years later, his children, whatever, that they had learned this presence from Confucius. That Confucius began to say, hey, this guy was saying something. What really codified this in Chinese culture was his teachings was put in to what were called the examination system. in the Song dynasty, which is in about 8 or 900 AD. And it was put into the examination system in such a way you could not get a job in China, in the government, unless you passed the exam. Which meant you had to know the teachings of Confucius and what that meant with virtue as we are supposed to do our job and how we are supposed to live. That was his legacy. That was his impact on continuity and the continuum. And most importantly, to the discussion here, the lineage. What began as the I Ching, and then went into Taoism with Laozi, and then Chungsa, and then was passed to Confucius and Mencius. One of the most amazing experiences you have when you go to China is one of the cities an hour south of Chufu, and they call it a temple to Mencius, but it's really a park. We would call it a park, dedicated to this guy. But they built this park, and it's really amazing, 1,000 years after Mencius lived. Wow. He had that kind of influence on history. Now, the school that I taught in 100 years earlier was only for the 4 families, Mencius was one of them, and Confucius' family. The only people that could attend that up until 1912 were descendants of those people. After the revolution in 1912, they opened a school to the general public. So anyone could go. And that was a real change in the way they saw people universally and not just tied to this particular family and what they should do. But the Bodhistavva, when we talk about as a human face or form, that's what that means. The Bodhisattva is the one who sees suffering. I may have said that earlier, but I want to repeat it. And does not turn away. Not that because they're perfect, but because they are willing. This vow is not about becoming more spiritual. It's about becoming more human, fully, compassionately, courageously human. What does that mean? How do we identify ourselves as it relates to the people we know and to people we haven't met yet, who we want to know and who want to know us? So we see beyond who we are, so we always have a sense of becoming something greater. This vow is not about becoming spiritual. It's about the moment of turning and saying, I choose to stay. Every spiritual path has a moment of turning. Whether it's the aha moment, or maybe we've lost a job, or a member of our family has died, or some in the Christian world will say it's a second, coming of ourselves. But it's all the same. Whether you're a Buddhist, or Jewish, or Taoist, or Christian, there comes a moment when we lose everything of who we think we are. That's an eternal truth, because we were never that person. We were never that person that we tied solely to material wealth and growth that defined who we thought we were. That's not who we ever were. But we let culture and money and things move us in the direction beyond what we're supposed to be here to do. And that's the essence, again, of what Buddhism and the Bodhistavva Vow teaches us. There's a presence we came into this world with, and there's a presence we will live this life with. And how did we move in such a direction to become our greatest self in that process? I think that's an important part of what this does. I like to say it's a lot of what Unity does. It's a lot of what the Fillmores knew. The Fillmores studied this before they started their church in Kansas City. They studied a lot of what Emerson had to say. They studied a lot of Eastern philosophy. They studied a lot of indigenous Indian sayings and teachings that were here long before we arrived. It was that connection, a continuum of spirit. That there was a path we are each on that we have to follow for ourselves. It's not something somebody can tell us. We have to do this. No, we have to understand that may be okay, but that's not the path I choose to follow. But if I want to follow that, I'll learn enough to know that that's the teachings of Jesus or some other way shower that we think merit our attention and that we model ourselves afterward. So that idea of every spiritual path having a moment of turning. Any thoughts? Comments? Okay. For the Bodhisattva, it is the moment when the heart says, I will not escape this world. I will participate in its healing. I will participate in its healing. A conscious decision to understand who it is I am and how do I mold what I'm going to do to that presence. And I will participate in that healing. In this moment, when we stop asking, what about me? And begin asking, how can I help? That's it. That's it, what it's about. It is the moment when compassion becomes stronger than fear. And that's a very important thing to say. Because a lot of what pushes people to certain thoughts is fear of not having enough. And if somebody else gets what I think I need to have, there won't be enough for me. So I fear they're getting what I think I should have for myself. I think that is one of the biggest weaknesses of human nature. Is that idea of fear. There's not enough, so he can't have that because it's going to pull away from what I think I deserve. And that is a serious weakness.
Why humans were created this way, that they have this fear dominating their life?
Why do people? I think a lot of it is their environment that they grow up in, and what popular culture teaches us. The idea of there's not enough. There's not enough for everyone, so I have to take care of myself. And how do I do that? By thinking certain people don't deserve it. Certain people don't deserve to have a minimum wage that they can live on. Certain people don't deserve medical attention for their families because it's going to take away from who I am or what I need. It's fear. All of that is driven by there's not enough. What they don't realize is nature provides. Nature provides. What we learned through medicine, what we know now, that we didn't know 50 years ago or 100 years ago, whatever. There's always enough. When we moved from an oil economy to solar or other means of energy, we learned that we can change. And that, again, is the essence that we learned thousands of years ago in the I Ching. I Ching is the power to change who we think we are to who we really are. And understanding those underlying contradictions. That's, I think, the key to your comment. What are those underlying contradictions that make things the way they are and make me respond the way I do? Do I not have enough of what I think I deserve? So let me keep somebody else from getting that too, so I will be able to get what I need. Fear is the greatest problem of how we do not grow as a person.
We were created like that by God.
No,
This is part of our
No.
nature.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Trying to
Go ahead.
No, nothing.
You know, another
we have an online community that can't hear.
Okay.
We don't.
Another word that possibly helps with fear and that gives understanding is fish, selfish, selfishness.
Selfishness.
Yes. And which is a condition of fear. But it's a word that's helped me in terms of
Right. I think that's a great point.
selfishness.
When one of the things that really brought this to my attention is I remember standing in Chufro, out a community that's thousands of years old. I lived in the old city and taught there at the Confucius Mansion, and many of my students were from the countryside, and they grew up with the thought of Confucius. Many of them had lived out in the countryside on the same piece of land that their families have lived on for 500 or 600 years. And they were tillers they were farmers. Yeah. Now, when all their lives they were out tilling the field, when they died, they would bury that person out in the middle of the field, and there'd be a mound where they buried that person. I thought that was amazing. They were still a part of that land that they had known their whole lives. Well, these girls that were all 19, 20 years old, they didn't want that. They wanted to become something else. And the easiest way they could see to do that and the security was to become a teacher and a job. And so what I learned by my experiences with them was watching the students come to class. You know, some carried burdens I could see. Most carried burdens I could not see. Now, I went out to the villages many times and I met with them a lot. Like many times they knew me before I got there because I called Dan. I had done the daily word in China and had gone through all Shandong province. They know who Kongdan was, but they'd never met Kongdan. So when I went as a student, as a teacher, it was a big deal.
When you say burdens, is that fear?
A burden. A burden is great, is absolutely.
Okay.
That is a great way to put it. Because the sense of not having enough and the burden we carry
Yes.
and expectations we have on ourselves.
Yeah.
And even more, when I think of dislike, it's not my dislike of someone else. It is my dislike of my ability to become who I think I should be. And I think that's a really important thing to understand, because it's not a matter of hating other people. It's more along that hating who we see ourselves becoming.
Yes.
And that is why a lineage for me and an understanding of history and memories become so important. And if you can see that, then in effect you're never alone. You always have those with you that follow the same continuity, the same memories, that you are here to live.
Mm-hmm.
Over the years, as I taught in Chifu and lived in Chifu, walking the ancient streets, the footsteps, walking in the footsteps of Confucius, walking in the footsteps of others who had followed him for thousands of years in Chifu. And there I was, teaching at the school of his descendants. Wow. That was amazing. When we talk about an epiphany of who we think we are, we have to look back on how we define ancestors and lineage that goes beyond the genealogy of what we think we grew up in. Because it's not that, and that is one of the essences of spirit. When we think of the universe and cosmos, we think of new planets and universe found all the time, always growing, always changing. What's going on? The universe is changing every day, every moment. We are supposed to change with it. We're not supposed to remain stagnant in who we think we are without moving in the direction of our highest good. And that was a basic teaching of what Confucius said. You know, and the idea of that realization is the beginning of the Bodhistavva Vow. It is the moment when the heart opens and stays open.
Okay, so going back to the nature of man or whatever, the Toltec say that we're living in a dream because we're not connected with ourselves.
Right.
And in the Avatar Course, Harry Palmer says that he kind of describes that somebody in the village, it has to make decisions. And so that person is set apart because he's the one that makes the decision. If he can control people, then he can set himself up. So it's kind of a greed thing or a selfish thing that creates the dream of the planet, because he figures if he, and in his illustration is that he doesn't want people to go out from the village. He wants to control them.
Right.
And so he creates there's tigers in the jungle and the tiger will eat you. Well, he says, is a tiger going to eat you because you expect the tiger to eat you, or because it's the nature of the tiger? Do we create that nature by our expectations? And so he kind of develops the thought that it is a dream that we're taught. and we're taught by our culture to believe that there's not enough.
Right.
And so it's trying to figure out where that came from. And it to me, it seems like it comes from greed, but why we got that hit is beyond me. I mean, it doesn't make any sense when you know that there is enough. But does the Confucius, do they explain any of where that comes
Well,
from?
one of the greatest things about thinking about that is when Confucius lived, and he was born in about 500 BC. It was during what was called the Warring States period in China. And there were numerous competing thoughts of how we should rule the land and how people should live. What ultimately happened with Confucius over a period of 500, 600, 700 years was the emperor and those in charge saw Confucius as a way to control people. Now, that wasn't the intent that Confucius had. And if you read the early sayings of what Confucius did, but when in the Song dynasty in about 700 AD, the emperor decided we're going to make Confucius' teachings the state exam system. It was basically what you're saying. They were going to make the teachings of what Confucius was saying comply with the status quo, so that people live within that realm of expectations that the emperor and those in charge basically wanted them to be. So that same idea, what you're saying, the guy in the village having control of everything, that's precisely what they wanted. Now, what Taoism taught and Buddhism taught at the same time was no. We are each individual here to find our own path. Lao Tzu said it the best. Chengzi was famous because he would laugh at authority. He would laugh at these people, like, you guys are nuts, you know? And he became famous for that. His writings were very good and illustrating that the way you think things are is not really the way they are, but that's just what they want you to believe. And that's what Chengzi did. Chengzi was very famous for a number of things. And one of them, of course, was the idea of the butterfly. When you wake up and are you the butterfly dreaming you're a human dreaming you're a butterfly. But even more, what Chengzi was famous for was the idea of the perfected man. And what does that mean in Chinese history? Over thousands of years of what the perfected man was supposed to be representative of. And unless you followed virtue and benevolence, you couldn't do that. If you're only interested in your self-interest and not your family or your community, then you were never going to become that. And that became a very strong strength of what Taoism was able to come over hundreds, if not thousands of years. It's a maturation of practices that say, oh, that's not what it is. Oh, that's what I need to follow. So it's a growth process. How do we grow into who we're supposed to become? When I was in Tibet, I went to Lhasa and walked the ring road where all the Buddhists who follow that religion. There's always an argument, is it one or the other? But I was overwhelmed. I was oppressed because they were living the life that they chose to live as a Buddhist. And as they followed the ring road around the Paletta Palace and all the monasteries and everything, it was their way of dedicating themselves to the path of what that meant. And living in that way. You know, and the idea again is every person is carrying something. And every person is walking through a story we cannot see. So it's hard to judge someone else if the only thing we have to go through is our own life experiences and how we think they should live, or what you're entitled to, or whatever. The vow itself has 4 movements. The traditional vow is ancient, poetic, and vast. But today I want to offer it in a way that speaks directly to us, here now, in this community. The first movement is that I vow to see all beings as part of myself, not separate, not others, not strangers, but expressions of the same life. That is essential. The second movement is I vow to meet the world with compassion. Compassion is not softness, it is strength. It is a willingness to see clearly and respond with love. That's it. The third movement is I vow to continue the work of healing, not to fix everything. We do not do this alone. We walk together. We lift each other. We become markers for one another. That's important. We become the marker. We, in unity especially, become the marker of showing, oh, that's how we should live. That's what we should do in that set of circumstances. But we are to take the next step that is mine to take. The fourth movement is I vow to walk with those who walk with me. That is the strength of unity. That is why we come every Sunday and talk about the principles of the Fillmores and unity. I vow to walk with those who walk with me. You know, this is the vow. It's not a promise to be perfect. It's a promise to be present. For us to be present. How do we live the vow? The vow is not grand. It's not dramatic. It's not a mountaintop moment. It is daily. It is small. It is a choosing presence when we could choose distraction. It is choosing kindness when we could choose judgment. It is choosing patience when we could choose reaction. There are 3 simple practices or steps that I think we could do to follow this particular path. And that is that we have to pause before we are reacting. That means if we find ourselves in a situation that is disorienting, or with a family member or whatever, we don't particularly care for, or we don't think it fits what we should do, we pause first. And that's the strength of our breath. You know, the very ancient saying in China that says, the wise man breathes from the heels of his feet. Not from here, our abdomen. We breathe through our whole body, from the heels of our feet, in such a way that we see the circumstances in which we live and we respond accordingly. You know, that we choose compassion over judgment. Judgment closes the heart. Compassion opens it. Judgment is, again, that fear that we spoke of earlier, and why we see others as different than us, which is a great hindrance to us becoming who we are supposed to be. It's that judgment of others that we have no place to try to decide. Okay, it's the compassion that we are to live, and that we ask, how can I help to lighten the load that others are in or have? And why we have a food pantry here at Unity for people that are hungry. You know, we will help them so that they can eat. You know, I think that's really an important thing. Sometimes the answer is just a word. Sometimes it is silence, not saying anything. Sometimes it is simply being there, being present when others need us, to be the person in their lives that they need to be with, and to see that just our presence is helpful. In most cases, that's it. So, as a closing moment, I'd like to talk about becoming the stone marker. First ourselves, and how we project that to the other people we meet. Last week we talked about the stone markers, the ones that stood for centuries pointing the way. That's important. That is one of the strengths I always found in China, traveling all over the country, visiting what we would consider parks that have been there 1,000 years, with the ancient pine trees, all the architecture that looked like it was there from the beginning of time. The mountains that you would climb and know that thousands of people had climbed this mountain before you, had had that mountaintop experience I spoke of earlier. But it's those stone markers. That's why I took thousands of pictures in China that I include on my website. You know, many times all I have to see a picture and it takes me there. It takes me back to where I was at, just by seeing the picture and being within that living history, which is really critical for me. So, we become the stone markers. In unity, we've become the light, the ones who hold the light. We become the ones who show the way forward. We become the ones who say, through our presence, you are not alone. You are a part of something that continues. And for the person themselves, they continue through our memories, understanding that we've always had a presence, and we need to understand who we are so we can take the next step. This is the Bodhistavva Vow. Not a vow to rise above the world, a vow to walk within it, awake, compassionate, and steady. So I want to end with what I call a closing blessing that fits our unity thought. Is that may we walk gently, may we walk bravely, may we walk with open hearts. May we remember that every step we take is a part of a larger story, a story of healing, of compassion, of awakening. May we become markers of light for one another. And may the vow we take today continue long after this hour has passed. Amen. That concludes the talk for this morning. My website is thehongdanfoundation.com. One of the things we talk about is a continuum. I talk about it all the time. A continuum of spirit. And understanding that continuum did not begin in this life. The continuum of spirit is generations, thousands of years old. Thousands of years old. And if we are blessed enough to have a sense of what that is and what that means, that we take that step and say, okay, this is who I am. And this is what I'm here to follow. And I will do. Okay. Namaste. Thank you. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate those who are online and also those who may be following me on my website regarding the Bodhistavva Vow. And that you learn more about what this means as it can impact your own life. Okay. So I've been tasked, as every speaker is every Sunday, to give our unity announcements. The importance of our announcements is that it gives each person a way to move beyond themselves and find a path they can follow as an extension of the unity teachings. That's it. As an example, everyone is invited this evening and every Sunday evening at 6 p.m. for meditation. Our board meets monthly, typically on the fourth Monday at 6 p.m. However, with Memorial Day being on a regular meeting day, the next meeting has been moved up a week to tomorrow, May 18th. All are welcome to attend. Next Sunday, for the celebration service, we are thrilled to welcome Marlene Bricker back as our guest speaker. Marlene has been speaking for us regularly, and she brings a wealth of speaking and teaching experience. Next Sunday, join Jerry Sherman at 9:15 for a New Thought adult education class. Discovering oneself. The 8.5 billion different ways we travel to find our path. You can join in person or watch live here on our Facebook page. The Prosperity Growth Team will not be meeting in May. We will announce the next meeting as soon as we can. We're excited to announce the formation of our new Buildings and Ground team. This team is for anyone who would like to help with basic repairs, maintenance, and landscaping for the church. No tools or experience are necessary, just an initiative to help. Sunday, May 30th at 7 p.m. is the first concert in our summer concert series. Come to Unity through music. We will be having a town hall meeting during our next Friendship Sunday potluck on June 17th. So please stand and join me for our prayer for protection. Please all rise. I've been reading this for well over 20 years. It's like ingrained. Yeah. But it's the light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. Thank you. We are done.